Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one!
Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and he hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard to another week of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, or another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday as we're coming to you from BB's Market as we do each and every week. Of course, BB is a part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wealth and Family of Restaurants in and around the Bloomington area. We're greatly appreciative of Endeavor Hospitality and those great places that I'm getting ready to dig into this brand new breakfast menu here. And also, of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio powered by Andy Moore Honda. Go to andymoorehonda.com to get more to your door. Welcome in. Jim Coyle with you as always for another edition coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios Mobile. As we're here at BB's, as I said, looking forward to another great show today. On the program, Alec Busey. We're going to try to get caught up on recruiting information. Not a lot happening this week. With the cancellation of the visit of Jalen DeLoros, but other things that are going on in the background. We'll talk about that. Villanova names Mike Baker Dunleavy as basketball GM. Sonogo is heading to the draft. NCAA make changes. Lots of other things on the program. Alec Busey, like I said. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, in addition to Rob Cassidy from Rivals, National Recruiting Director. We'll talk to him as well. And, of course, your comments in along the way. Welcome aboard, everybody, no matter where you're listening from. If you're on radio, down on the river, on ESPN 97.7, The Ref, ESPN, always the right call in Evansville, all the way up to Hammond, Chicago on WJLB, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, all over the state. And if you're on YouTube or wherever, across Florida. Hope everyone is having a great day and a great start. Looking forward to getting to it. How are you? Friday is not as beautiful as it has been, but we're going to take it no matter what. Baker Dunleavy, like I said, named GM for Villanova's basketball program. That will head up, and what that will do is in essence, he will be over. It's kind of like the business end of it, it seems like, because it's going to involve NIL. It will involve men's and women's. He left his coach at Quinnipiac, whom he got a nice win over Rhode Island before he left. But he's a Villanova graduate. Began his coaching career and spent the last 6 years at Quinnipiac. But this is a new position created by Villanova. It'll oversee men's and women's programs, the NIL programs, the transfer portal, and brand marketing efforts. So it's basically an athletics director for basketball, for Villanova, that is, of course. So there's that. But he leaves coaching behind. But that is a new position that you're going to see at some places. That's Villanova is not some place that has football, so they can do that. I don't know that would work at a place like Indiana because it's a completely different animal. But there it is. There's a new job into that program. So not a bad gig. Not a bad gig. How will it help them, impact them? But I don't know. But they're moving forward. They are trying to make sure that they don't get caught behind. And it's probably a very, very smart move. Very smart move on their part. So looking forward Cassidy today to see what the national layout or the national landscape looks like. The NFL, and we'll talk about some changes made in the NCAA, but the NFL is making some important helmet safety changes, and it's by position. This is pretty cool. Quarterback, they've done all these stuff, and how your helmet hits the ground, where the impact happens most likely, very, very different per the position you play. If you're a lineman, it's like being in a car crash every time. It's like being a ram. You're butting heads every time, and they receive the most head trauma of any player in playing. Quarterback is usually hitting the ground from behind, but they are these changes. And here's a stat that blows your mind. Helmets that were in the top performing group just a few years ago, 2020, 2.5 years ago, they were in the top performing group. They're now prohibited. They're not even, you can't even use them anymore that quickly. That's how fast and how advantageously the technology is changing. So that's good to hear, because of the concussions and CTE, and there's so much that we don't know about that. Bob jumping on from Georgetown. Grew up in Georgetown, Bob, or as a kid. So welcome aboard, man. Appreciate you. Hope everybody else is having a great start to their weekend, being that it is Friday here at BB's, of course. Plenty to get on and on about. Indiana football, their scrimmage tomorrow. That will happen at 11:30 a.m. Open to the public. Taking some spring football. I'm going to be out there checking that out. It's an actual opportunity, because during spring practice, I was doing the show each day, so not able to take advantage of that, unfortunately. But we'll be looking forward to doing that today, or tomorrow, rather. I haven't checked the weather yet. What's that going to be like? Hopefully, it will not be that bad, or it'll be nice. Even better than that. Saturday. Going to get up to a high of 81, so it will not be bad in Bloomington. Mostly sunny skies with a high around 80. That's Chamber of Commerce weather. And it'll be taking place earlier in the day. So, looking forward to getting out and seeing some football action. The NCAA made some changes in some of their rules. The biggest change is going to come with recruiting, and student athletes formerly were limited to 5 official. I think that had been changed at least to their junior and senior year, but now it is completely open. Now, how much time will you have to take a ton of visits? A ton more than that? Who knows? The difference between an official visit and an unofficial visit, official visits are completely paid for by the schools. Unofficial visits are not. And now that you can take as many as you want, you can go over, you can go to UCLA if you're being recruited by them. Spread that out, go to Miami, and I'm sure we'll see some of that. I mean, some of these guys are just going to love what's being able to add a few trips onto there. But what I see is more cost. This is just going to drive the cost of sports up more. These are more trips that the parents come in, more and more money going out. And you know who's eventually going to pay for that? That's right, fans. That's right. And I'm not talking about through NIL. Higher tickets, things of that nature. We'll certainly find out. We will certainly find out. How's everything in your world today? The recruitment of Dalton Connect, the Northern Colorado transfer that Indiana has been kind of quiet on their front, but I think mainly because Mike Wood's knee surgery. Jalen Deloge was expected to be on a visit starting today in Indiana, but that was, I don't want to say it hasn't been rescheduled, but it is postponed. There we go, is the word verbiage, until Mike Woodson will be available. So I think that's why it's gotten kind of quiet. But Dalton next, Indiana very much needs. He did take a visit to Oregon last week, which is ironic, being that where Indiana from Oregon. He's set to take his second visit to Tennessee this weekend. And that's per the Knoxville News. But it's not a great, I wouldn't say it's not great when you've already got a team getting a second visit, unless that first visit was prior. The second recruiting dead period will end on April 13th. Well, it did end that was yesterday. It ended yesterday, meaning on-campus visits can begin again this weekend. And that's why he was expected to be here. Chris Ledlam was also visiting Tennessee. Both of those guys. So Indiana fighting Tennessee for the two pieces that they probably need most to add to their roster. As Dalton averaged over 20 points a game last year, shooting 38% from three, and that's on 6 attempts per game average. He's putting up at least 6 per game. Huge difference. That is scoring attempts that Indiana has to have, not the 1 and the 2 attempts per game. Connect is rated as number overall transfer in the composite rankings. Before he went to Northern Colorado, he was at a JUCO in Northeastern, so he's around. But he is he's a guy that will play that wing, but that has a lot of guard in him. So it's definitely someone Indiana could more than use, I guess I would say. How's everybody hitting up the Andy Moore Honda hotline? Robert says it looks kind of fuzzy down there, and and if we're having a bad connection, someone's going to have to let me know, and we'll try to get that taken care of in the break. But we've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, including Alec Busey joining us from thehoosier.com. And we'll get caught up on recruiting, this weekend's Indiana football, and more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good job, Jim.
Hey, man, I'm seeing people complaining about the signal.
Looks fuzzy and glitchy.
Are you listening and watching?
Yeah, on my end, it's coming through fine. I do. Your picture gets a little fuzzy, but you haven't cut out from me. But I see a couple people are saying that. It's funny. Jared says it looks fine, but then a couple other people are saying it's messed up.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Does Alec know he's coming on today?
He was in the email that John sent.
I
But I don't. Yeah, I haven't met Alec yet.
yeah. Okay, connection's being all right. All right.
Well, we're about to go live. If Alec jumps on, I'll just throw him in. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this beautiful Friday. It's not really, but I do see the sun poking its head out, although we're supposed to have cloudy skies all day in ahead of tomorrow's football scrimmage for Indiana, which will be taking place around 11:30 a.m., which I will be out there looking forward to that. And then just chilling out for the rest of the weekend. As it is at a quiet one. Jalen Deloche expected to be on a visit to Indiana this weekend, off to Penn State instead because Mike Woodson having knee surgery. His former coach, Mike Rhodes, is now at Penn State, and his former teammate, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but the former A-10 player of the year, reigning A-10 player of the year, just made his intentions known that he's going there. But Jalen Deloche is not – he's not – the most pressing piece that Indiana needs, obviously. I just talked about Dalton Knecht and Chris Ledlam, guys like that. That's what Indiana needs. That's who Indiana needs. But getting them in here, and kind of a bad time for Mike Woodson to endure whatever it is he's dealing with his knee. But you can't control those things, and I think that they more than understand that. And if you want to go someplace like I believe Jalen Deloche wants to go to Indiana, that won't matter. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, well, who cares? But he's a 6'9" guy. He's not – no, it's not the most pressing need, but it's still – you still have slots to fill. El Ellis, another name we've seen popped up, the kid from Louisville. So there's more people out there than you realize, although – I was amazed at how quickly Houston was able to really snatch two really good scoring guards up the other day, and they did a great job of that. And Indiana's going to have to do the same. It's just time. It's time to put up, basically. From a recruiting standpoint, you can't just be okay. You've got to be good. You've got to hit home runs. And players like Dalton Knecht and Chris Ledlam and those guys, they're home runs on paper. We can't say they're home runs until next season. But if they're able to land those guys, you can't blame them as far as the recruiting aspect goes, because they would be getting exactly what the fans want, the pieces they need. Now they have to get them to then you have to get them to perform and perform together as a unit. which does not seem to be a big issue with teams. I've not seen that be a problem. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite for them. So, let's see. Man, hope everyone else is having yeah, there you go. Great start. Any questions? Pop them up on here until Zach joins us. Alec Busey out working on a story at the moment. And hopefully we'll be hearing from him a little later on. Anybody heading out to the scrimmage tomorrow? Great day for it to get out. Great place to take the kids to get out to. It'll be kind of a great Saturday afternoon. Maybe go to the Home Depot if there's time. Slid that one in again. What about the no limits to the official visits? Everything is trending towards the student athletes, which that can be good and bad because they deserve a lot of what they're getting. But secondly, then you have to look, are they already prepared for some of this? And that's really neither here nor there, but it's so much change so fast. And I don't know who this is really going to benefit because the big teams, they're already getting these visits. Whether it's Texas, an Oklahoma, or an SEC school, I mean, if a guy is going to more than 5 schools, man, that's a lot of time. First of all, those are all weekend-long visits. So I think it's going to be kind of like the portal. Well, different than the portal. The portal is not relaxed at all, but I think you may see, because schools they're going to also want to limit these to a degree, because again, we're talking cost here. Cost that it's not easily or immediately recoupable, depending upon the level of player you are. You know, if you're a 3-star, how likely are you to get 7 or 8 visits to go to? So all kinds of things popping in and out with that. Is it, as things continue to go by way of the student athletes, I think that's good, but is there a line? Where do you stop? Where can you stop? Is it going to go so far that the schools and programs start to become upside down? And if that ends up being the case, who are we helping? If we're damaging the sport, who are we helping? And if it's Auburn or Alabama or Ohio State or Michigan or Penn State, they're not going to be hurt. But Rutgers, Indiana, Villanova, or not Villanova, but I'm trying to think of lower end of P6 schools. Those are the guys I think that teams that I think are going to get hit by that. But hit us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. We'll hit those as well. Andrew says that CJ Gunn and Anthony Neal need to spend the summer in the gym hoisting threes like Gallo did last summer. Well, then Galloway needs to this summer spend time on gaining confidence to shoot the three. And I'm sure CJ is doing just that. That is exactly what he does. He's a gym rat. I'm sure that Anthony Leal's doing that. But anybody that expects for Anthony Leal to see the floor is not paying attention to what's going on. Indiana's athleticism should be much higher next season than it was last season. And if you're not hitting the court, then odds are you're not going to, when those situations change, in a different direction. People that, if you're on Indiana's bench right now, and unless you are a freshman, those are not the guys you're going to look to. The sport has changed. It is not a sport where a third and fourth year guy are going to be your leaders. It's not going to be a sport where you're getting a ton of production from a third and fourth year guy. Most programs, because if you are, you're probably not doing very well. You have to have elite athletic players year in, year out. Some are going to come and go. Some are going to be here for 2 years. No, the 3-year, 4-year player, he's a dinosaur. That is now a 2, potentially 3, but it's a 2-year guy. The 2-year guys, you've got your, if you can land an NBA type prospect and you can pair him or them with players that you've either picked up in the portal or a year along. Someone that came in as a heralded freshman, didn't quite get there, but one season might get them there. But no, like last year when people kept talking about Duncan, and it's not going to happen. That stuff's not going to happen. That game that's an old game. As far as the style of college basketball. And it's not coming back. And I look at a team, and I don't mean, and I'm not trying to pick on Purdue. I wonder what a program like Purdue, who has not embraced this at all. Now, they had a unbelievably, uberly successful regular season last year. They had a horrible postseason, becoming just the number 1 seed ever to lose. This is the second time within recent years they've lost very early in the tournament, and the third time in recent years they've lost to a team seeded much lower than them. While I think Matt Painter's a great guy, and you can get away with that style of play in conference right now, there's a reason Purdue, a team like Purdue, I'm not blaming Purdue, or I'm not harping on Purdue, but I'm just using them as an example. There's a reason a team like Purdue has, 2 guys in the NBA right now? Period. Indiana has probably 7, and they have not been. And who's been the better program over the last 6 years? Easily Purdue. Hell, Indiana didn't even beat them for 6 years, but yet the talent level is that's the difference. The talent level. You can kind of sometimes in college you can outcoach people and win with lesser talent, but that is not going to be something that's going to get you through a 6-game NCAA tournament. And there's a reason I think Purdue has not been to a Final Four since 1980. And again, it's that style they've not gone away from. And even at the college level, now I think you have to go away from that. I just don't. I no longer think that is going to be a feasible option for Matt Painter. But while you have a Zach Edey, you cannot ignore him. You can't not use him. That's the same deal with Indiana dealing with Trace Jackson Davis in the last couple of years. Everybody wants to talk about Trey Galloway. Oh, he didn't shoot the ball. Miller Kopp didn't shoot the ball as much. Did they have the opportunities? I don't. Some people say, yeah, they passed up shots, and sometimes we did see that, but were they supposed to pass them up? What was there? There's so much going on that we don't know, but there is. I do know the game of college basketball has changed immensely just in the last couple of years. And we're seeing that. We're seeing the results of that on the floor at the end of the year. And I think that's going to continue as the parity. I don't know if it is parity, but it's because it changes yearly. It changes from a year-to-year basis because you can pick and choose, and you can choose to add to a team just like pouring water on a garden. And that is good and bad. I hate that the change can happen so fast. In some regards, it's very beneficial to the programs, of course, but the NCAA has to finally stick to the guns on something, and they cannot allow the portal to turn into this Wild West slingshot where you can transfer more than once. I know that right now supposedly it's not going to be the case, but we'll find out together. Ike asking if anyone else is a bit worried that Necht and Ledlam are together this weekend in Knoxville. You know what? Indiana's had guys in here together. And that happens a lot. It depends. As long as you can get them on a visit afterwards, who knows? You know what? I always would rather be the last to have someone, but you can only do what you can do on these visits. And there's a lot more to it. What opportunities are there at Tennessee or wherever the case may be, playing time wise, NIL wise, which Tennessee's not going to have a problem with NIL, I wouldn't imagine. They're at an SEC school who has a successful football program. So that should allow them to have ample funds to help. But are they situated like Indiana is, NIL-wise in basketball? No. That doesn't always mean a lot. Stephen asking, why does Leo still have a scholarship? Well, why would he not? He's still on the team. He is yet to graduate. That's mainly why. I think that he could probably, does he have one more year after this or two because of the COVID year? I have to check that. But, once you're at Indiana, at least, once you're offered the scholarship, it's yours. Or once you have the scholarship, it's yours as long as you want. Go back and look at Tim Priller if you want that example. Much more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from BB's Market today. Looking forward to talking to Zach Osterman from the Indy Star later, as well as Rob Cassidy, the National Recruiting Director for Rivals. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Or Alec Busey up next, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I said the wrong name.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. Hey, brother. Normally we'll get you on a regular schedule. Because not a lot has happened.
No. What are we talking about, by the way?
Just basically catching up on. I was just talking about the fact that Necht and Leland are expected to be at Tennessee together this weekend. Deloche is at Penn State, but it's been quiet mainly because I'm assuming because of Mike Whitson's knee issue, which kind of a bad time for him to have knee surgery, which I'm sure that wasn't planned.
Okay, sounds good. I was just making sure we were talking about the spring football thing tomorrow because
and that too, the spring scrimmage. We'll split it in half.
Okay, I don't know if I'm super comfortable talking about football, to be honest with you.
Well, there's not. We'll just talk about the scrimmage, and there's not a lot to talk about. Yeah, okay. No, I got you. Don't worry.
Yeah, I just don't know if I know enough about football right now.
I got Zach on next. I'll talk about that with him.
Okay, cool.
Cardinals have to get my Reds hat back out.
Man, they are bothering me right now.
What's up, brother? How you doing? Good to you. I got my friend here. Hey, ma'am, how are you? Let's see. How's your week going, by the way?
Good. Feel like I've settled in a little bit and have kind of started to get into a routine, which is nice. After Monday, I definitely got a little bit less busy. I mean, like you said, there hasn't been a ton of stuff happening or news breaking, so it's been a lot easier from that standpoint.
Yes, it has. I'm trying to get these stupid things connected.
All right, you go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. Coming to you, of course, from BB's Market, where we do each and every week. Part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wild Club. Make sure you stop by your butcher, your baker, no matter where you live. Make sure you mention Indiana Sports Beat Radio. They'll give you another 10% off of the incredible foods here. And the Butcher's Cut set to open up soon. Newest steakhouse in and around Bloomington. Welcome along in Alec Busey from thehoosier.com. Alec, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on again this week, Jim. I appreciate it. And excited for the weekend. Hopefully we've got some good weather out here in Kansas before I move out to Bloomington.
Yeah, we'll make sure everyone knows. Welcome, Alec, to the IU Beat on thehoosier.com. And you came in at the right time, at the wrong time. It's busy, but yet we got this unexpected break this week because I'm guessing an unscheduled knee surgery for Mike Woodson. And with that, it kind of put everything, I don't want to say on hold, because there's still conversations happening. There's still things going on behind the scenes. Jalen Deloche was expected to be here, but is in Happy Valley this weekend instead. And you've got Dalton Necht and Chris Liedlam down in Knoxville, Tennessee. Two of the pieces that Indiana desperately needs, and three pieces that they could possibly get.
Yeah, certainly. I think the two kids going down to Tennessee is certainly not maybe a concern, but an eyebrow raiser, I guess you could say. Connect, I think, is the one that's the highest on their board right now because I think he fills more of their needs because he's the best shooter of the trio. Ledlam is – I don't even know if Ledlam fills all of their needs as a floor spacer and as a shooter, but Deloche definitely does. And I think Deloche is should be at a point on their board where they're interested if they feel like they need him or if they absolutely need that depth in the front court. But I think that they've maybe started to transition their interest to some other players at positions of need that might be a little bit greater while also keeping a large focus on trying to get Connect on campus because they've only had a Zoom with him. But he's actually been able to go visit a few other schools. So that makes you think that Indiana might be a little bit further behind some of those other schools when it comes to Connect's transfer recruitment, because the way transfer portal recruitments work is a little bit different than high school. I feel like stereotypically when you recruit high school kids, you want the last visit. You want them the opportunity to make that last impression. But with the portal, kids oftentimes seem to make decisions pretty quickly after making a visit, and coaches tend to kind of push really hard for commitments on those visits because if they are not going to get someone, they need to be able to pivot and they need to be able to go to their next target in the portal pretty quickly. So anytime that you have a transfer portal target going to another school, it's certainly something that you're aware of as a coaching staff, and you have to be ready to pivot quickly. If Dalton Connect or Chris Ledlam were to transfer to Tennessee after this weekend, or you lose Deloche to Penn State, and certainly Rhodes has had some good success getting kids from VCU to transfer. He's earned 2 transfers from his old program, highlighted by Ace Baldwin. But then obviously you kind of look at things a little bit deeper, and he's got a lot to replace at Penn State, so he's got to bring in a lot of pieces.
Yeah, and Deloche is, like I said, he's a guy that he is just for added depth, I guess, like you said a minute ago. He's not the most pressing piece, but it's with the offense that Indiana's expected to change to, which is one that is more athletic, that moves much more, that can score easier off the bounce. He doesn't seem to be one that would be prioritized. I would think that they'd still be looking at 3 wings instead of adding another front court guy.
Yeah, I just feel like when you watch him on film, he looks more like a stereotypical 4 to me in comparison to the style of play and the strengths that Connect and Ledlum have. And when you consider that, I think that's why we've seen Indiana kind of prioritize Connect and Ledlum over Deloach, especially here of late. Like, there's been
those are 2 completely different players. Deloach, Deloach is completely different than those guys. He's not a wing; he's a power forward or a forward, where the other guys are wing players.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've kind of seen Indiana maybe shift their focus just a little bit more towards Connect and Ledlum, because those fit more of their need right now. They've got 3 guys in the front court who, regardless of what Kalel Ware did last year at Oregon, Indiana's going to ride with that to some degree. And if they aren't, then he becomes their 3rd guy, and they're going to ride with Malik Renew. And I think they feel confident enough that Peyton Sparks is going to give them a pretty high floor and not be a complete. Sparks plays at a level similar to like Dane Danger did this year at Illinois, averaged close to like 10 points and 5 to 6 rebounds a game. Then I think Indiana's going to be pretty happy with what Peyton Sparks gives them in the front court. But they need support from guys on the perimeter and guys on the wing to be able to handle the basketball, to be able to space the floor, because right now, like, they don't have a ton of that. And they're really banking on Xavier Johnson getting a waiver from the NCAA for the injury hardship that he obviously is going through after breaking his foot at KU and then deciding to not play in the NCAA tournament. And if they don't get that waiver, they're going to be in some real hurt, I think, for guard play. And they're going to have to scramble for guards because they haven't targeted a ton of guards. They haven't recruited guards in the portal very hard. So I think that suggests that Indiana is really confident that Xavier Johnson's going to get the waiver from the NCAA. But if he doesn't, Indiana might be in trouble and they might have to pivot quickly. Otherwise, they're going to be relying a lot on Trey Galloway, I think, to play point guard, and then potentially even Gabe Cupps.
That's not going to happen. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that they're very confident in that. But even with that, getting back to the pieces that they need to fill, we're hearing, the same names. But, of course, like I said, there's been a kind of a pause of sorts. But if they're putting all their eggs in one basket with, say, Dalton Knecht and Liedlam, and just keeping these a short list, what happens if they don't? Are they as confident getting those guys? Because the clock is ticking as far as filling those spots with the level of talent they need to be filled with, unless something changes. There are other names, like I said, that's popped up here recently. El Ellis from Louisville is one of those. So there are other names out there, but it's something that has to happen. And I wouldn't expect it to go much further. There's so many different reasons. Getting it, they want to know where they're going. The coaches definitely want to know who they're going to have. You want the team together, practicing together, doing all. There's just 10 different reasons to get it done as quickly as possible. Of course, you have to finish school, so there's that. But I would think that things are going to pick back up kind of quickly after this week for Indiana.
Yeah, and we saw them kind of start to expand their net just a little bit. You mentioned El Ellis a little bit there, the point guard from Louisville. My one thing with him, he seems like he's a little bit more dead set on being able to go professionally in the NBA at some capacity. If he's able to go secure a 2-way contract from a team, he seems to want to be able to do that. He told 24/7 Sports this week something along the lines of that he'll stay in the draft, even if he doesn't get that he'll stay in the draft, I should say. If he gets a guaranteed 2-way deal. So that creates some concern that he may even want to come back to college. Now, a guaranteed deal is probably going to give him some really good money, maybe money that Indiana's NIL package can match, but maybe not exceed too much, maybe exceed it just a little bit. So that's something that is something to monitor, I guess you could say. And then they've expanded their target a little bit on the wing. They've been connected to Florida State transfer Matthew Cleveland. He's a kid originally from Atlanta, was a 5-star top 25 recruit coming out of high school in the 2021 class. He actually had a pretty good year this past season at Florida State. It was a bad Florida State team, though. He did average about 14 points a game as a sophomore, and is a really good rebounder. Grabbed about 7.5 boards a game, and he started all 30 of their games this past season. So don't be surprised if you start to see Indiana connected to Matthew Cleveland a little bit more. They don't have any direct connections to Cleveland, though, that I know of right now, so that becomes a little bit more difficult when it comes to recruiting kids out of the portal. And if Indiana does miss on Connect, Ledlam, Deloach, Cleveland, Ellis, there's an understanding amongst college coaching staffs right now that there's going to be another wave of guys that enter the transfer portal that are entered into the NBA draft who decide to withdraw because of whatever reason. That's going to open Indiana and every other program in the country up to a lot more targets and a lot more opportunity to find players that you want to go get. So if that becomes something where we see Indiana connected to more and more people come the end of May, I think the withdrawal date is May 31st. I need to double check that for the NBA draft, but don't be surprised if we see Indiana connected to some more players who are entered into the NBA draft in several weeks here.
Yeah, that's a risk that any team would be running, especially one that is in need like Indiana is. Question I have, and a lot of people have, I wonder, how is Mike Woodson going to use his bigs his next year? And I don't know that he knows yet because he doesn't know the complete personnel he's going to have. The race and trace thing, I don't expect to see that something like that next year. Of course, you don't have those guys, but like whether it's Malik, now where having him on the floor will be different than having, say, Race Thompson, where both of them would put the ball up from outside, where obviously bigger but not as beefy as Race is. He's a lot more athletic. So I don't know if that's the same thing or not, and I'm not sure how Mike Whitson's going to utilize those wings. You also have Peyton Sparks and Deloach if he ends up coming. But those three bigs, I just wonder how he is going to implement their use together or apart.
Yeah, I think that's going to become an interesting dynamic. I think certainly right now, trying to project who's going to start and who's not going to start is maybe fool's gold, especially when we don't necessarily know who else.
We don't even know if two of the starters are not even on Indiana's roster yet.
Yeah, it's true. But when you look at the front court and some of the players that are in the mix there, they don't have a floor spacer, which is fine in the Big Ten. You don't need one. But you can win with multiple bigs on the floor in the NCAA tournament, I think. I mean, UConn just won the national title. But if you're going to try and win that way, I don't think your bigs can be your first option offensively. And they were not at UConn. They were not even close to the first option at UConn. Their first option was Jordan Hawkins, who is likely to be a lottery pick in June's NBA draft. Now, Jackson was also in the mix there as one of their primary options for UConn, but they had some good pieces with Sonogo. Klingon obviously coming off the bench is really good. But as we've seen with a lot of teams in the Big Ten over the last couple of seasons in the NCAA tournament, when your big is your primary option offensively, it does not go well in the NCAA tournament because it becomes really easy to scheme that out. So I'm going to be intrigued to see how Indiana kind of attacks that from a scoring standpoint, because we've seen Purdue, as much as Indiana fans love to hear this, they've lost to, a 13, a 14, and a 16 seed in the last three NCAA tournaments. So Hoosier fans love that. Now, of course, Purdue has obviously had success in the Big Ten in the last few years. They just won the Big Ten title by 2 or 3 games, I believe, in the regular season, and then won the Big Ten tournament. So, and Zach Edey is the reigning Wooden Award winner. And I've heard some things that suggest he might be coming back to school, which, from what I have kind of followed, wasn't the expectation up until the last couple weeks or days, I guess you could say. Hunter Dickinson at Michigan obviously has had a little bit more success. They've made it to the second weekend a couple of times, but they just completely missed the NCAA tournament this past season. Illinois with Kofi Coburn, they didn't ever make it to the second weekend despite him being an All-American and having some good supporting cast pieces around him. So the sample size and the history of recent players, or recent teams, I should say, who functioned through a big in the NCAA tournament isn't great. So that means that I think Indiana is going to try and do some things creatively, maybe run more of a pro-style offense where the ball moves a little bit more, maybe get a little bit more ISO action for certain players. And I certainly think that they're going to try and play a little bit more up-tempo and try and get to the rim, especially when you kind of look at some of the players that they have on the roster currently. Like Trey Galloway is not someone who's an elite shooter. Like if you look at his percentages, they're really good, right? But it's all on low volume. Xavier Jackson, similar kind of thing before he broke his foot. I think he was shooting around 38% from three. Again, not on high value. And we know that Malik Renew can maybe shoot it out to 12 to 15, maybe 18 feet. Not something that he's going to do on high value. And Peyton Sparks is probably someone who's going to be anchored to the block. Khalil Ware can space the floor, but he only shot 27% from three last season. Wasn't taking a high percentage of them, and his catch and shoot numbers weren't great either. So those are all things that you need to consider. And when you're trying to structure an offense, I think the biggest thing in today's college basketball is having an understanding of ball movement and cutting. And guys just can't be standing in one spot so you can post entry to a big man who's going to try and turn and do a hook shot over his right or left shoulder. So I am intrigued to see how those three players, particularly in the front court, really impact the type of offensive style that Indiana is going to try and run this upcoming season, because I do think it's going to look drastically different than what they did a year ago, where, they had Trace. So they could just give it to Trace and they could count on 20 to 25 points a game, and they could count on 10 to 13, 14 rebounds a game. That's gone. And replacing that is going to be really, really difficult. And if you need an example of how difficult it's going to be to replace a center like that, just look at the struggles that Illinois had offensively this past season when they didn't have a lot of good shooters around him. And I just make that direct comparison because Kofi Coburn was obviously a multi-time All-American, averaged 20 and 10, and then they didn't surround him with a ton of really good shooters. And now you kind of see Indiana right now with what they have. They don't have a dominant big. Illinois didn't have that dominant big to count on for 15 to 20 points a game, and they didn't surround him with a ton of shooters. So that's why we've stressed the importance of Indiana going and finding players like Dalton Connect in the transfer portal, I think, Jim.
Yeah, and that brings up a thought to me. How important is it for Coach Mike Woodson to have and run an attractive offensive scheme set for the players that he's trying to get, not just for next season, but for the season after that? He needs to get the guys in now that he can run the offense now that will continue to attract those guys, because that wasn't the case the last couple of years. We just said everything ran through Trace Jackson Davis, and that will not be the case going forth.
No, and I think you make a good point there, right? And it comes down to the idea of just having a program identity, which I think becomes really difficult for a lot of coaches to be able to kind of put together these days, because your roster is built year to year now, as opposed to being built for a 2, 3, maybe 4-year time frame. And you put all those things together, and I think it becomes a little bit more difficult for coaches to consistently have a style that they want to play. If you kind of look at some of the advanced numbers from last season, if you look at Ken Pom, Indiana had a top 30 offense, and that's something that is going to have to improve, I think, if they want to win a national title again, or even make it to the Final Four. Something they haven't done since, is it 2002? Is that the last time they made it to the Final Four, Jim?
Indiana, yes.
Yeah. So, those are things that need to be improved upon. Those are things that I think having an understanding of what your coach wants to do from an X's and O's standpoint is really important, because it allows you to recruit players via the high school ranks to kind of fit that. And if you keep some of those kids, and if you keep some of those kids in your program for a couple of years, you're going to get to a point where they're familiar with the system, they're able to contribute to the system. And then you only have to add 1 or 2 pieces every year via the transfer portal to kind of bolster that system, bolster the roster, so you can have more success in the NCAA tournament and have success in Big Ten play. And I think that when you look at what rosters that have maintained continuity have done in college basketball, at least in the regular season, and as we kind of look forward, use Michigan State as an example here, Michigan State wasn't great last year in the Big Ten. They finished close to 500, finished 8th or 9th in the league, I think. And then they make a run to the Sweet 16 and beat a number 2 seed Marquette team. So you put all those things together, and I do think that having continuity is really important because it allows your offensive system to come together and to become something that you know what you're getting on a day-to-day basis and a game-in, game-out basis.
Absolutely. I'll let you go, but I just wouldn't hit this comment, Robert. You're not wrong. You're not far from it. You said that if IU, listening to Alec, if IU doesn't find some really good guards, they are looking at the type of offensive output they saw from Archie Miller. Well, yeah, because you don't have producers. You've got to have guys that can score. You don't have shooters. Guess what you did not have during Archie Miller? Shooters. So yes, you are correct, but I don't expect that to be the case. Indiana's a different program right now. They're a lot more attractive. You have a lot more attractive of a coach to draw to that as well. Alec, I know that the Hoosier.com, you guys are going to be busy all weekend. Indiana has their scrimmage set for tomorrow. I know you'll have coverage of that up as well, and on top of anything that breaks with Indiana basketball recruiting.
Yeah, we'll be recording a podcast today, me and Keegan are, so you guys can check that out. I'll break that down in different segments, so you can watch the certain segments where you want to listen to me yab some more about Indiana basketball, and then some of the other pertinent topics going on in college sports right now, like rule changes in the recruiting landscape. And then we're also going to talk a good bit about some of the challenges facing the new Big Ten commissioner, Tony Petitti, later today on the Hoosier podcast, I should say. And then we'll have some other stories going up, maybe revisiting this past season for Indiana basketball, some of the best moments that people can relive and re-enjoy, and some more content that I'm sure you guys will want to take in after this weekend with everything related to what happens with the spring football event. I'm not going to call it a game because it's not really a game.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not sure how much of a scrimmage it actually is. Alec, can't thank you enough, brother. Have a great weekend. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Alec Busey from thehoosier.com. We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios mobile unit here at BB's Market, where we are each and every Friday. You're a butcher baker, no matter where you live. Up next, from the Indy Star, Zach Osterman will talk about Tony Petitti and the new Big Ten commissioner. What is that bringing? We'll find out. And more. Rob Cassidy joins us later for more recruiting talk. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
All right, Jim, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. I hope you're having a great start to your weekend. I am, because I'm here at BB's where the food is incredible. Waiting for they have a brand new breakfast menu at BB's, by the way. If you stop by there, mention Indiana Sports Beat Radio and get a 10% off. Joined now by our friend Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, sporting his Braves apparel. How are the Braves doing? I've not checked the standings lately, Zach.
Well, this is an ATLians. This isn't the Braves. This is,
I just see between you and Dustin Schutte, he's always got he wears a Braves hat too, but
love it.
It's hard to see those. Can't always tell whether it has the tilde on it, but
sorry about the technical difficulties getting logged on. My computer decided it just didn't want to turn on this morning. So
that's how they are. How are the Braves doing, by the way? Leading the division, of course, I'm sure.
That's a good question. Let's find out. I know they've won more than they've lost. They swept the Reds.
The Reds won last night. They beat the Phillies.
Yeah, they swept the Cardinals, the Braves. Surely the standings are down here somewhere. The Braves are 9-4. They are 2 games up in the National League East over the New York Mets. We will not be declaring, unlike certain Mets fans last year, that the National League East is over. But yeah, a good start. They've had a bunch of injuries, which is obviously concerning. But if we're just getting them out of the way now, then that's all well and good.
Yeah, well, they're doing better than Rick Bozich's Chicago White Sox. I can promise you that. And both are doing better than. Well, I haven't checked the Reds' record as of right now, but I'm just assuming, based on the fact that they're the Cincinnati Reds, that it can't be that good. But how are things going with you? How's the fam, by the way? How's the babe?
Can't complain. Everybody's just kicking daycare viruses back and forth. We're sick all the time. We're just plowing ahead the way little kids have you doing. So
this weekend, not as big as Indiana had thought it was going to be. There you've got the Indiana football scrimmage going on Saturday, a basketball visit by Jalen Deloche, which is probably going to be rescheduled. I'm assuming this knee surgery for Mike Woodson was not planned, since Jalen was expected to be on a visit as recently as like the day before it was changed.
I think it was planned. I mean, I don't know a ton about it, but I think it was just, kind of one of those maintenance things. So I mean, it's also possible. Hey, it's also possible that dates got mixed up in the setting up of visits and things like that. And I mean, the other thing too is this time of year things can move so fast in the portal that they can change just as fast. We talk about how quickly things can develop. Things can change just as fast. If needs change, if opportunities change, whatever it might be. But one way or another, I don't think Mike Woodson talked very openly about the knee surgery. I think it was just kind of a sort of a standard thing, though. I don't think he fell and hurt it and needed it fixed, if you understand what I'm saying. So
right. Well, he plays a lot of golf. I was going to say probably just and having played a long NBA career, that stuff wears on regular people, much less those that have put their bodies through what he has put his through. So there's that. The Big Ten has a new commissioner in Tony Petitti, and it follows a trend, Zach, in which conferences are going away from athletic administrative types to television network types. The Big Ten kind of started that with Kevin Warren. That didn't go well, but this is a little different. Tony Petitti was really heavily involved in things like the BCS. It just has nothing but great things said about him from his time at CBS, at ABC. It seems like a good hire, but you still have to wonder, okay, who's going to handle the actual administrative part of governing college athletics, not just the TV rights portion of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is worth saying, and I'm not. What is the word I'm looking for? I'm not here to defend Kevin Warren. I do think if Kevin Warren sat down and laid out his KPIs, pre-hire, I think he'd probably feel he met those. He navigated NIL, he delivered a new TV deal. Whatever role he played in it, he expanded the conference by adding the 2 LA schools. But I think it's almost sort of like Kevin Warren knocked some stuff off the to-do list that allowed the next guy to step in and have a bit of a cleaner slate. Now, of course, the other thing with Kevin Warren, we couldn't have seen COVID coming, and that obviously affected his tenure. We would all hope and pray there's not another global pandemic around the corner. But I think that what's interesting here is you've got a much more blank slate for the next few years for Tony Petitti because, in fairness to him, Kevin Warren did cross some important things off the list. While he was commissioner, he was not without his faults. He was certainly not without his detractors, but he did kind of knock some important stuff off the list while he was in the job. And so now, to your point about needing people who are going to run college sports and things like that, well, we're not completely sure what that's going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, and so it can be, to borrow a phrase that I heard Fred Glass use more than once, it can be the remit of someone like Tony Petitti to maybe think some deeper thoughts in a job like that, if you understand what I'm saying. And not feel like there are sort of needs with deadlines, big looming needs in the next 3 to 4 years that he has got to absolutely drill home on before they, flank the conference.
Yeah, you've got Big Ten media. You do have a gigantic Big Ten media rights, I guess, deal that will come up once UCLA and USC are in the league. They just signed one. So how do they navigate that, adding those two conferences into the current media package?
I mean, it'll be fascinating. I think it will. It's also worth saying the media package. The media package also doesn't come completely online in the first year. I think the big piece of it that won't come online until I think year 2 is the CBS agreement, because CBS is basically going to trade out the SEC Saturday afternoon game for a Big Ten game. But the CBS's current agreement with the SEC runs through the coming football season. So the deal won't be fully optimized for schools until 2024, 2025 is my understanding. That's the beginning of it. These things also tend to pay more at the end of deals than the beginning of deals. There tends to be sort of an escalation of cost to the broadcast partner. The idea being the longer you get into the deal, the more you build viewing habits, the more you exploit new markets and yada, yada, yada. And you're adding value for the broadcasters. The deal goes on. The broadcast partner is expecting that the Big Ten will get more valuable as the years go by, as it has for the last 50 years or whatever. And so they'll be paying more at the back end. So there's that piece of it too. We know Kevin Warren did not make USC or UCLA adhere to the same entry agreements as Maryland, Nebraska, and Rutgers. There will be no probationary period where they're only receiving a portion of a full share of the TV revenues. They will be a full, and fully paid member of the Big Ten from day one. But I think where you'll probably see that impact to me unfold more is the back half of the deal, once it is fully online and kind of fully optimized, and once we're maybe at a place where we are measuring the value of the Big Ten in a little bit more of kind of a long-term way, for lack of a better word. In part because the other thing is, we're also by that point going to be leading into the new playoff format, and we're going to have to renegotiate the whole playoff agreement and figure out who gets what. And, if you want to talk about value to broadcast partners, there may be no bigger value in this Big Ten deal to Fox than getting far enough in bed with, excuse me, that's my watch, than getting, kind of far enough down the line with the Big Ten that Fox gets a seat at the table in the playoff conversation. And so that's maybe not something that's written in an agreement between Fox and the Big Ten, but Fox is, you get closer to renegotiating this current deal. If Fox is a major player in the college football playoff, then Fox and the Big Ten are going to stay even tighter, and there's probably going to be even more money for everybody to spread around. So it's, these can be sort of big thoughts questions. And again, frankly, I think that people like Tony Petitti are going to be in the big thoughts business for the next few years. But it's going to be fascinating to see where it leads them and where we all wind up.
Yeah, because and then I wonder when you're adding programs like UCLA and USC, you're not just adding two programs, you're adding two brands, two big time brands in a big time TV market. I don't know how that's going to impact the setup of the Big Ten, but I wonder if when you add two high profile programs like that, is that going to kind of help continue push down programs like Indiana, Rutgers, maybe even Purdue, if both those teams go into the West, even though they're getting more money, they don't have a very good football program or history. Is that going to just continue to try to push them down some?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I think that it's, you can I think first of all, it's worth saying I would be surprised if we still have divisions in I would be surprised if we still have divisions in the Big Ten in 2025. They're going to keep them next year. That is based around essentially not wanting to rip up the scheduling model, build a new one, and then have to rip that up and build a new one a year later when you get USC and UCLA in the conference. I think it's probably a more exaggerated sort of condition is not the right word. It is a more exaggerated state of the condition that programs like Indiana are in already, which is essentially you're a small fish in your pond, but being in your pond makes you a big fish in the bigger pond, or a bigger fish than you used to be in the bigger pond. And you can kind of see that however you want. Like I can make you an argument that that's good and bad for Indiana, if you understand what I mean. Like, on the one hand, yes, there are some competitive advantages Indiana's really struggled with as the Big Ten has expanded, as Nebraska has joined, as the conference has gone to 14 teams and gotten richer, and suddenly there's so much more money flowing through everyone. On the other hand, if Indiana's not in the Big Ten, Indiana doesn't have the facilities it has right now. It doesn't have the new baseball stadium, softball stadium, volleyball, wrestling complex. It's not able to afford to do all these things. It's probably not able to afford to renovate Assembly Hall. That's paid for by a gift primarily from Cindy Simon Scott. But can Indiana afford to dedicate that gift to one thing if it's got all these other needs that it can't meet without the Big Ten money? So, I mean, listen, there's also some ways in which, Big Ten's going to have a hard time keeping the track and field championships out of LA starting in 2025. Like, if you just look at, historically, the West Coast schools are going to have something to say in volleyball, and it is going to be fascinating to watch the Big Ten try to compete with two LA-based schools in track and field. Two schools with enormous heritage in those sports. Go look at the track and field alumni that UCLA and USC have. It's like an Olympic Hall of Fame, frankly. So there's that element of it too, but I think it's really more just an exaggerated example or state of the current condition that Indiana's already in, which is, yes, in some ways it hurts. It's more difficult to be in the Big Ten when everybody's got more money and you're already lower on the totem pole than the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Penn States, et cetera. On the other hand, that provides you so much advantage over all these schools outside the conference that you're competing with, and allows you to meet needs that you never would have been able to meet if you weren't in the SEC or the Big Ten, one of the two. I think it's probably 6 and 1/2 for Indiana.
We'll certainly find out, and I'm assuming you'll be. I'll see you out tomorrow at the football scrimmage for Indiana, and as the bell tolls for recruiting, we'll keep up with that as well. Zach, can't thank you enough, man.
Absolutely, thanks for having me as always.
Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Up next, Rob Cassidy from Rivals joins us. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Sorry, Rob.
Hey, I didn't know. So it's up to you. I'm working out of a coffee shop this morning. I can do the video component. I can just set it on the ledge here. I'm outside. Or, I mean, it's up to you. It's
whatever's comfortable for you, man.
Either one's fine. I don't mind standing out here in the middle of the street with my camera on. It doesn't bother me.
I saw you out there. I'm like, oh, my God, where did I end up making him do this from?
No, listen, because the last time I did it, I didn't think there was video. Does that work? Or?
Yeah, look, can you turn it sideways?
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on.
Beautiful. Look at that beautiful picture.
Yeah, I bet that.
Where are you now?
I am on the street corner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's, you know how that goes. How are you?
Good, sir. I'm in Bloomington.
Beautiful, beautiful place.
Pittsburgh, home of, I think, isn't Xavier from there?
No.
Xavier Johnson.
Yeah, he's from Pittsburgh.
And actually, Jalen Hujafino actually is, or Charlotte.
Originally. No, I think he's from here originally.
Yeah.
And then he's out of Montfort. Yeah. Yep.
How are you been?
Good. Been busy, but it's been good.
I bet. I know since Travis left.
God. Yeah, it's he helps so much. It's and who knows if they're even going to replace him. So who knows? It could just be me for the foreseeable future.
I hear you.
Yeah,
we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this beautiful Friday, and we're joined by Rob Cassidy from Rivals. He is handling all the recruiting just by yourself. It's all you, man. I'm sure it feels that way, doesn't it?
It sure does. It's, I have some help with, Russ Wood handles the transfer portal for us, so he's been doing that. But still, it's been tough. It's a one-man show over here, but it's not exactly working in the mine, so I can't complain.
I hear you. I say it every day. Rob's in Pittsburgh right now today, out and about and keeping it. There's so much going on with the portal. It's kind of calmed down a little bit, but it's like, I hate to use a tsunami but it's like there's a second wave coming that you're expecting this new wave, and we're like, when is that going to hit?
It's interesting the way things work in there too, because you've seen kids, like Uganda Kingsley at Kentucky, who will go in there just to kind of test to see if there's more money to be made elsewhere, and if there's not, then they come back. And I don't blame them. They're playing within the rules. But, I tried to tell my bosses that they weren't ready for you use the word tsunami. They weren't ready for it. I was like, every kid is going to enter the portal. And I think they thought that I was exaggerating because they're not as plugged into it as some of us. And sure enough, and they're not even close to done yet. I think there will be another wave. I think you're right.
How important is it for the NCAA to make sure that they do not allow the second time transfers to happen? I mean, without sitting out. It is, to me, if they don't do that, it's not the end, but it is the end of college basketball as we know it.
It's already a different landscape, and right. I understand it. It's going to be hard for fans. I'm trying to put myself in a fan's shoes to be able to get to know a new roster. If that happens, and I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, it's probably good for players. If that happens, though, it'll be like high-level YMCA basketball, where you get assigned to a team before the season, And then the next season you get assigned to a new team, and you really just hope there's some good players on there with you. You know, there's no continuity, it seems like, and that's probably not good for the fan experience. And that's something the NCAA has to consider.
Not only that, that's got to make it more difficult for programs not like Indiana or Kansas or Duke or whatever, who are going to they're going to sell out their programs. They don't have to worry about season tickets. But when you have programs that are not historically great, but maybe they have a good year, but how to sustain season ticket sales for them, that has to be difficult for those types of programs.
Yeah, that's going to get tougher. I guess the other flip side of this coin is for some of those programs, though, is if you're bad, you can make over that roster pretty quick. I mean, I think there's always hope. Like, look at Louisville, right? Like, before the transfer portal era, they would have been – I mean, I would have told you, come on here and said the Kenny Payne era is over. There's no way they're going to build off of this. But now they can just get a whole new roster, hope it works a little bit better. So there's always a little bit of hope, I guess. So, if you look at what happened at Pitt last year, right here where I'm standing, about 2 miles up the road, they looked sucked. They remade their roster. They make the NCAA tournament, and they saved their jobs over there. It's a whole new world, and I think we're just getting to the tip of the iceberg on what this is actually going to be. Because, like you said, if they let another second transfer happen, there's a whole new can of worms that'll open up, and it'll be interesting to watch it.
Well, look at K-State. Didn't they have 10 new faces this year?
Yeah, they had 2 players on their roster. They had Marquise Noel, and they had one other player, I think Ish Wainwright. And then they went in the transfer portal, and they get Keontae Johnson, and they get 8 other guys. And the next thing you know, they go from firing their coach to, an Elite 8. And that's the thing that can happen. This is going to become a veterans game, I think, where these teams, I think it hurts teams that rely too heavily on freshmen. If you look at Duke this year, they had a star-studded freshman class, and they kind of, they underperformed. They definitely did. And meanwhile, you've got teams like Kansas State who are built through the portal and built with juniors and seniors that can thrive.
And I think that's part of the frustration of a lot of Indiana fans. They want, well, like everyone, they want it now. But they look at someone like Kansas State who has no basketball history not like comparison to, say, Indiana. But yet they were able to go out, get that done, have a good tournament run, and the Indiana fans are just tired of that not being able to be the case. And Indiana is set up. Now this should play right into their hands with NIL. You've got tradition, history. You've got an NBA-type coach, the resources, facilities out. So this is something that needs to kind of happen quickly for Indiana, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, they're set up. They're set up to thrive because they're set up as one of the teams that can use these mid-major teams as minor leagues pretty much. And, I hate to say it, but that's exactly what it is. If you have a good year at Wichita State or wherever else, you get called up to the majors. And Indiana should be part of the majors. They have the money to be that. They have the tradition to be that. And that's what's happening. It's really also, how willing are you to recruit other teams' rosters? Now, coaches will come on here from every school in the country and tell you they don't do that. But I'll tell you what, they're all doing it. Now, maybe not in person, but through back channels, they will talk to people. Is he happy there? So-and-so. That's just how it's happening. Is it right? Who knows? But that's just part of the game now, is recruiting mid-majors rosters while they're on the team.
There's been a couple of names batted around for Indiana that they've been looking at for a couple of weeks now, whether it's Dalton Knecht and Chris Liedlam from Harvard, both on visits to Tennessee this weekend, I believe. Jalen Deloche was expected to be on a visit this weekend, but Mike Woodson had knee surgery. He's at Penn State visiting. And I saw that you had a tweet out of VJ Edgecombe, a new name, but that's a freshman for Indiana that they're looking at that was offered from Long Island City, New York.
Edgecombe he's one of these kids that he was on nobody's radar last year at this time. He had a monster year for playing for Lehigh in Long Island, kind of led them into national prominence. And now he's got a long list of offers. And, I think he's a kind of guy that Indiana could get in with if they can get him on campus, just because they've got in early enough still. It might seem late in the game because he's a 2024, but because he's so new to the scene, it's not like he has these, he hasn't even been on a visit yet. So it's been early enough to where I think that if they decide they want to get involved there, he might be a pretty good target for them.
And this is an area that Indiana needs, obviously. He's a 6'5", I don't know if he's a small forward, 3, whatever you want to call him.
He
but
play the wing, yeah.
how is his shooting? Indiana has just been loathsome from long range shooting, which is something Indiana teams have been celebrated for decades, and now is gone away. They can't buy a shooter, no pun intended. But what does Edgecombe bring?
He does a little bit of everything. He's a scorer first. He's not going to be an on-ball point guard. That's just not him. But, he can absorb contact. He can shoot it pretty well. He's not a super elite shooter, but he's definitely not one you're going to leave out there unchecked. And he fills it up on the stat sheet. He plays hard on defense. He can rebound. He's not a specialist in any one area. I think the upside of Edgecombe is how much he does. He's one of these guys that can really impact the game even when his shot isn't falling particularly well, because he'll impact it. He creates extra possessions. He's a big, strong kid. The other kid I'm interested in to watch with Indiana is the kid out of Asa Newell out of Montverde. He's been kind of flirting with Indiana, and it's starting to look like, and he's a shooter too, a big long shooter. It's starting to look like it's going to be a Georgia-Indiana battle for that kid.
Well, and then you've got Liam McNeely there at Montverde, and obviously Indiana has a great connection with Montverde with Jalen Hutchifino and Malik Renew coming in there first. They have long been associated with Liam McNeely. Not sure where they are right now with what's going on in Texas. That has been kind of an Indiana-Texas battle, and with Chris Beard being let go, but now they had a great season last year, but I'm not sure what Liam McNeely's relationship is there with Rodney Terry. He didn't have a great run at was it UTEP or UTEP?
Yeah, UTEP.
So I don't know where he is, but but these are freshmen, and unless they're a 5-star freshman, there's not going to be much of an impact right now. It seems the game has gone from a 3-4 year guy type player with that 5 to a 2 to 3 year player with the 5. It's just everything has seemed to. It's just been shortened.
It's so interesting to see how some of these major schools are going to react to this, because Duke is, John Shire's on the record saying they're going to take fewer freshmen and just opt into the transfer portal. And
why would you not?
Yeah, it's so early though, and it's such like a small sample size. What's the line? I think if you can get a top 20 freshman, you still take them. But like the 20 to 30 range that used to still go to blue bloods, used to still land, at the back end of a Kentucky class or something. Those kids, they're going to drop down to the next level now because, Kentucky will just take a kid off of Kansas State's roster or whoever they decide to poach. It really is. It's been an adjustment even for me. I can't imagine what it's been like for the coaches.
But not only are they taking players, they're taking coaches. I mean, last year Kentucky got 2 from Illinois, and so that's bouncing around. And because of that, though, the Blue Bloods they've been equalized.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because their biggest deal was being able to secure any and every major freshman that there was. Let's be honest, Kansas, Duke, Kentucky were at the top of most lists. But I'm also going to sit here and tell you that, we know what went on with Adidas, and you can act like you don't know what went on with Nike if you want to, but go ask Zion what went on with Nike, and boom, boom. So, but now it's been equalized.
And for the reason that they can't take everybody, but also for the reason those Blue Bloods used to be able to stash kids, right? You could take a 5-star freshman and stash him on the bench for a year. Then the next thing you know, when the guy in front of him graduates, he takes over. Well, that's over. You can't stash these 5-star kids on the bench anymore because they're just going to leave if you don't play them. And they're going to go somewhere else and find playing time, and it's going to equal the playing field.
All right, before we get back to some players I want to talk about, the term blue blood, it drives me freaking crazy when people do not know what a blue blood is. And this is my opinion, but I'm pretty staunch on it. There are very, very few true blue bloods. And
I agree.
They're not really going to change. And if you are a blue blood, you don't become an unblue blood. You may not be a very successful one at the like Indiana is not what you'd call the most successful of the blue bloods at the moment. But guess what? They're still successful. They went to a Final Four in 2002. Purdue, the best team in the conference of late, has not been to a Final Four since '80. Indiana has 2 Big Ten titles in the 13s. they started winning their first title in 1940. They won one in 50. They were undefeated team in 70s, 80s. It's success over a very, very long period of time, like a royal family. There are Kansas, Kentucky, Indiana, UCLA, absolutely. UConn is absolutely not a blue blood. They're a new blood. But they're in a category all themselves. The program I'm really starting to struggle with is Duke, because Duke, I sent out a message yesterday. They did not win a national championship for the first 91 years of basketball. UConn didn't win one for the first 99 years of having basketball. So they've had a great run of a 25-year period, but that's where it is. What happens now that Coach K is gone? We'll see with that. It's just that little discussion just drives me freaking insane, though, because people have no idea what a blue blood really is.
I try to ignore the arguments. I see them, but in my opinion, I think you and I are pretty close to the same page on this stuff. So,
Ellis, Louisville. That's a name that I've seen pop up recently. Is someone that Indiana could be interested in. You watched the tournament last year. Indiana, they back in the tournament and had some great talent with Jalen Jafino, Trace Jackson Davis, but boy, that game against Miami was an eye opener. It was like watching kind of two different teams play. They were playing on two different levels. Miami was just a step quicker, working a tick harder, and that's what Indiana has to get back to. They used to be known for that type of play, along with the other blue bloods, but they're not right now, and they have to get back to that.
I mean, Miami had those veteran guards too, in the tournament that matters. I mean, they had 3 senior guards, 1 junior guard, and they were a fun team to watch. That's my preferred brand of basketball. Now, is it a winning brand of basketball long term? Maybe not, but I'll take the guard heavy Hurricanes. I really enjoyed watching them last year.
And Indiana that's their biggest need right now. Not necessarily guard, but shooters, wings. Xavier Johnson, I completely expect him to be back. I'm pretty certain that Indiana has great confidence in that, because I don't think that they have not been recruiting a point guard to my knowledge. You've got Gabe Cupps coming in, but he's a freshman. I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to.
He can shoot it.
People are very high on him.
Listen, if shooting is what you need, that's what he does. He's a little bit of a specialist right now. Just because he is so good at that one thing, but in order to not be a liability on defense as a freshman, they're going to have to really get him in the weight room. Just because he's not physically ready, I don't think, to guard some of those 1s and 2s in the Big Ten. But as soon as they can get his defense polished, at least it gives you a dead-eye shooter. He is a guy that you need to know where he is at all times on the floor. He's a catch-and-shoot guy. It's just how long is it going to be until he's physically ready to play in the Big Ten? It might be a year before he can give you real good minutes, I think, and not hurt you on defense.
And Rob, Indiana has 2 guys on the bench already, and Caleb Banks and C.J. Gunn, both of whom are a little different. They're both kind of Caleb's more of a 3, C.J. is more of a 2, I guess, but they could probably interchange. Both can shoot, but Caleb, boy, he gets active under the basket when he is in the game. He really impressed me last year when he came in late, started getting more minutes. Man, he would make an impact. If he played 4 minutes, he'd have 5 rebounds. I was like, wow. You could tell he wanted to play, and that is another difference Indiana has to have. They have to have 5 guys on the floor that want to play the way you have to play to win the game. I don't think that they've had that for a couple of years, but Caleb Banks is one of those guys, without question. CJ as well. He's a gym rat. But those guys have to develop because they are 2 players that could really help this team as well.
Yeah, it's like I always say, and coaches always say, I think Mike Woodson says this too, in order to play offense, you've got to be able to play defense, and that's what keeps you on the floor, and I think that's going to be the plight with them as well as the plight with Gabe is, you do a lot of things, they can score, obviously, they can rebound, but if you can't defend, Mike Woodson's not going to play you for long, long stretches, but that comes with time, and I think that's part of why veteran leadership wins in March. Because if you rely too heavily on freshmen, even 5-star freshmen, some of them are not ready to play defense at the college level. It's a different world, the effort that you have to give to defend, and even at the highest level of college basketball compared to the Big Ten.
And so now, as we wait for Indiana to see what they end up with, Mike Woodson this weekend had a knee surgery, so not a lot going on this weekend, at least publicly for Indiana on the basketball side. I expected that for that to resume. I know that, like I said earlier, Dalton Neck and Chris Liedlam on a visit to Tennessee. How worried should Indiana fans be that those guys are off there together? And one of that's a second visit, I think, for not for Liedlam, or maybe for Liedlam. I can't remember. One of them's on
I think it's the second one for him. I have not heard a ton on them. Like I said, we have a guy that really handles the transfer portal for us. I mainly handle the college seniors. I was aware they were on the visit. I don't know. Like, here's the thing about the portal. You can get as worried as you want, but there are so many players in there and so many yet to come that if you lose a guy, it's not pound the panic button yet, just because there's 13 more of them that maybe aren't even in there yet. Yeah. You can see this, you mentioned Kansas State last year. They missed out on a lot of transfer portal targets early, and everybody was doom and gloom. This new coaching staff doesn't know what it takes to recruit the portal, yada, yada. They get their second and third targets for the most part, and then luck. I mean, you never know who's going to pop up in there at any time. I mean, and again, like, did anybody expect Hunter Dickinson to just pop up in the transfer portal? That took me totally off guard.
That Chris, however you say his name, from Arizona. That was another one. Did not expect to see that. Obviously, winning is what cures everything. But with Mike Woodson having had the NBA experience that he has had, how important is that now with how the game has changed as far as NIL and the portal? How important is having a coach that has the NBA experience that he has for some of these kids still?
No, it's always been important. And now it's what you do. When you come in, that's important. I mean, look at Juwan Howard. When he showed up, he landed this great recruiting class based on his NBA experience. Now, if you don't capitalize on that and you still cannot win, that's not going to matter anymore. So I think when you look at Mike Woodson, the good news is he's got the NBA experience to pitch, and he's got the upward trajectory too. It's okay. We're improving. Maybe it's not as much of an improvement as some Indiana fans wanted from year 1 to year 2, but you're still going in the right direction. Whereas if you look at Michigan, the reputation of them with the kids is, okay, he's got NBA experience, but this thing is going in the wrong direction. So I don't think kids care about that anymore. I think it's a good way to get your foot in the door, but eventually the proof is going to be in the pudding.
Yeah, and earlier, like I mentioned, just like the players, the window has gone from that 3-4 year player down to the 1-2 year player. It's the same thing with coaches. And it's probably a little different for Mike Woodson being with the Indiana ties and all that. But how important is it that he wins this upcoming season? And by winning, I don't mean that he didn't win last year. They went to the tournament, but a first weekend exit is not what Indiana fans are looking for. And so to me, Indiana has to make a jump next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't go backwards is what you can't do. You've got to take at least a small step forward, maybe finish a little higher in the Big Ten, maybe make it to the second weekend, but something that you can point to say, okay, our coach knows what it takes to get you where you want to go. And also this program is headed in the right direction. If you can point to at least a little improvement in year 2, year 3, I think that helps. What you can't do is do a Michigan where you just, everything looks good for a year and a half and then it just completely collapses and then nobody wants to go there. It's A1 in modern recruiting is the money. Say what you want. It's name, image, likeness over everything. 2 is NBA experience with a coach and winning. And those are really the only 3 things that matter anymore. Gone are the days of I went to a school because they had a nice practice facility.
The likelihood to me of Zach Edey returning is extraordinarily high. I don't see him leaving. If he did, Purdue would just be destroyed. They're one of the teams that's still playing the older style that we've talked about that does not seem to be working in tournament time. Of course, they're become just a second 16 or 1 seed to lose to a 16 doing that. And there's not much change on their roster for next year.
Yeah, no, which is kind of they're kind of the outlier. Everybody else is, and you can make an argument either way of whether that's good or bad, but we're going to see. I always, it's like when people talk about football, when they talk, this team brings back 11 starters, and it's like, well, is it good to bring back 11 starters from a team that won 4 games? Or like, I don't know. If everybody takes a step forward, it's probably a good thing. Like, as we discussed, experience is winning now. Now, if you don't change anything about your style of play, what do they say? People that don't understand history is doomed to repeat it. I think that's probably a possibility as well.
Well, and we mentioned earlier that, their last 3 exits from the NCAA tournament have been basically to an average of a 14 seed.
Yeah, it's been tough over there for sure. There's no disputing that.
And then the Big Ten as a whole, and there's no way, I've already said, the one thing I learned from this season is I am out of the prediction game. And I mean OUT out.
Well, my favorite thing is like these people that are releasing like too early top 25s, and it's got like Kansas at number 6, and they have one player on the roster. It's like, all right, the one player on Kansas's roster is the number 6 team in the country. They were always a little bit silly, these preseason polls, but now it's just like, it's ludicrous. It's like, okay, there's 3 guys on the team.
And once you even know their roster, you're not going to know because it's not the same roster. They haven't played together. You haven't seen them play.
You don't know how the pieces
so many
fit.
Variables.
That K-State team, though, was to win the thing. I don't know. Like, I can imagine being a professional gambler. You really don't know what you're going to get year to year, day to day in the sport. And, I think that maybe in some ways that's good for fans. In other ways, the lack of continuity probably isn't. But in some ways, I think we're going to see a lot of NCAA tournaments that look a lot like the one we saw this year, where it's really a coin flip every game.
What's up next for you, Rob? What can Indiana fans expect to be looking out for? I know that you're covering all kinds of things.
I will be going to see Indiana target Flory Badunga next weekend. So the shoe circuits all start next weekend. So I'll be in Omaha for the Adidas, and then the next weekend I'll be with Nike in Phoenix. So I'll see pretty much every player in the country over the next 2 weeks. I know Indiana's heavy on Badunga. He's my first stop.
Who isn't? I mean, you've seen him play live, I'm assuming?
I have. Yeah.
He's just one of those. Would you call him a generational player?
I would call him a generational rim protector, for sure. As far as high school shot blockers go, I don't know that I've seen a better one in a very long time.
And 3 years. He's only been playing the game 3 years.
And his offense is still developing. We have number 2 in the country right now. I think there's a chance that he's number 1 before everything's said and done. Just kind of want the sample size to grow on him. But Indiana's in there, Purdue's in there, Cincinnati's in there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I get the sense that he doesn't really want to go too far away from home. So I think he will stay in the Midwest somewhere, but we will see where that is in the Midwest.
Yeah, he comes from the Congo. He has a family that he stays with. Yeah. So I think that they'd like to keep him close to home. Of course, I have no idea what allegiance they may have within the state, but that's going to be just one of the biggest recruiting battles we've seen in a minute, because he is at the 4A state championship game just a few weeks back. John Calipari, Mike Woodson, Tom Izzo, Bruce Pearl, Matt Painter. I'm trying to think who I'm missing head coach wise that was there. That was at a high school state finals game to see one guy.
He's gonna, and he's only a junior. It's gonna be an interesting 6 months ahead. I think you'll probably have a decision from him sometime early in the fall, and we'll see what happens.
Rob, I can't thank you enough, brother. You're a joy, and look forward to hopefully we can do this a little more frequently during the summer. Keep caught up.
Anytime you want. I appreciate coming on. I appreciate you having me. You're a joy as well. Sorry, I'm standing out here on the street corner and I didn't realize
it's a great view. Looks like a nice old place. What's up? What's up next for you? What can the people look for?
I'll be writing up from Adidas. Like I said, I'll be writing about probably Badunga, and I'll ask him about Indiana too. So, they'll be stay tuned for that, and we'll see what he says.
Look forward to it, and you can find that on thehoosier.com. Rob Cassidy from
Thank you very much.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Speed Radio, coming to you from BB's Market here on this Friday. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I hate when they don't fucking do this. No, I want them cooked together.
Do you think it's a pretty good chance that we'll get extract?
Oh, yeah. I'd be shocked.
We're good. Yes, for sure. Counting on him.
Well,
They should. I mean, they should.
yeah, I would be more than shocked. They got bigger issues to deal with than a kid playing 9 minutes more than the rural states. Ooh, doggies.
That's going to be cold, man.
Yeah, I'm used to that. It's generally how it is for me.
All right, Jim, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. I hope you are ready for the weekend. We're trying to get you headed in that direction. Man, that was a great conversation with Rob Cassidy, and we'll have him on more frequently throughout the summer, especially as the AAU season kicks off. As you heard him say, that's about to happen. He'll be off to see Flory Badunga, Indiana's biggest freshman target for next season. And yeah, freshmen are not going to be, to me, a huge part of the future, but ones like him are, because of the phrase I just used with Rob, generational talent. They don't come along very often, and when they do, you got to have them. He's one of those guys. Now, he's one because of his situation, because he is not jaded by America's willingness to try to make a quick buck or getting everything now. Flory comes from the Congo. I'm sure he is more than accustomed to dealing with challenges. He could be a 2-year player. You don't know about that. Indiana didn't even have him. So that's just funny things to talk about. You know, and I was thinking about earlier when I mentioned that I'm pretty certain that Zach Edey comes back for Purdue. If he didn't, you talk about screwed. You might not ever seen a team go from first to worst in the Big Ten like they could if they were to lose Edey for this season. So there's that. What's up on this weekend for you? Oh, it's a little 5 this weekend as well here in Bloomington. So you've got Indiana's football scrimmage tomorrow during the day. I think that starts at 11:30 and out at Memorial Stadium. Then across the way, you've got the Little 500 over at Armstrong Stadium, on the track around Jerry Eagley Field. So that is the world's greatest college weekend. That's what Indiana bills it at, as it was when I was in school. It's great, but that was just a fun conversation with Rob. And like I said, stuff changes so fast, man. People just need to just relax, wait, let it happen. It's not going to change anything. Whether someone knows today, tonight, tomorrow morning, nothing's going to change. So what are you heading out to do this weekend? What are your weekend plans like? Just going to chill, watch some baseball. I'm going to head out to the football scrimmage tomorrow. I will not. I kind of hate that they have it tomorrow, because my goal was not to be anywhere near the Bloomington campus during Little 500, because there's no parking. There will be, I'm trying to think, I don't really know what Armstrong Stadium holds, but single-digit thousands, I'd guess, maybe 9, I don't know, but that's a lot of cars. So the spillage is going to be over football stadium, so you have both of those things going on at once. So there's a lot going on. And if you're out and about, stop by BB's or one of the Endeavor Hospitality restaurants, Southern Stone, Feast, Metalworks Brewing Company, all kinds of great places to stop by. So, looking forward to it. I'm just going to chill this weekend and wait for everything to start breaking again next week, because I think that will start to happen soon as Mike Woodson tries to quickly get past his recent knee surgery. I'm sure they're working on these visits as we speak, rescheduling ASAP. We could see a flurry of visits within the next week as Indiana continues to try to get some of these guys on campus that have not been here, like Leland. So we'll find out. Another fun, not just a fun show, but gosh, what an incredible week this week was. And of guests as usual, and so happy for everybody. Cannot thank everybody for the week enough. And then, of course, especially today for Alec Busey. Of course, we just finished up with Rob, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. We'll make sure I didn't miss anybody. What's going on? The NBA is not quite into the playoffs just yet. Oh, yes, they are. They had to play them. Did you see the Raptors, Toronto, OG, and the OG Anunoby and the Toronto Raptors lose the play-in game to Chicago, the Bulls? They had 36 free throw attempts. Of those 36 free throw attempts, they missed 18. That is exactly 50%. NBA players we're talking. Not only that, OG was one of the three. I forget who the other two were, but it was OG Anunoby and two others that shot between 77 and 90% during the season at the free throw line. But one of the daughters of a Chicago Bull player, I cannot remember who it was, would pull the deal that the old Wichita State Shocker coach, Greg, what was his name, that got fired. Remember his wife would scream during free throws during the NIT when Indiana played them here at Assembly Hall a few years ago. She would scream during the free throws. It's unnerving. This guy's daughter would do it, and you could hear it throughout the stadium, and the TV announcers were laughing about it. But it obviously, you took guys that averaged 80-something%, three of them, and they became 50% free throw shooters. Wow. If you don't think it's mental, you're mental. So there's that. Man, I cannot thank everybody enough again. Like I said, Zach Osterman, Alec Busey, Rob, as well for joining us here. Rob Cassidy from Rivals.com. He's going to go out and see Flory Badunga here soon, so make sure you keep tuned to the Hoosier.com with Alec Busey. They'll be getting with him and all that coverage. And, of course, they'll have everything that's going on up soon. Of course, we're back Monday to do this all again to make sure nothing pops over the weekend. We'll have results from Indiana's football scrimmage and whatever else happens this weekend. We'll see how the visits went for the guys down at Tennessee and if there are any others rescheduled for the Hoosiers coming up next weekend. Big thanks to RC for sitting in today in place of John, producer, who is on assignment. And most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here, and we greatly appreciate you. Guys, go out and have yourselves a great weekend. Until Monday, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
I use her as an example in this big blue blood response I gave you.